Hey everybody, it's Elisa, and we are going to continue through the nervous system. So we talked a little bit about membrane potential and the action potential, but now we want to talk more about the operations of those gated channels. So this is part 2. Let's go ahead and get started. So during the action potential itself, we want to take a look at two very important, like positive ion channels. Okay, and those channels are going to be the sodium and potassium. Here's sodium channel and potassium channel here. So both of them are closed when we're here at resting membrane potential. They're sleeping, they're turned off. That's just where we're at. Okay, so as the depolarization event occurs, a few things are happening. Number one, those voltage gated channels are opening up, right, upstream a little bit. And we're causing these charge events or the membrane depolarization to occur. So that means our sodium channels are going to open up, and sodium, big, huge, positively charged sodium, is going to flood into the inside of the cell. So the next thing that happens, and that's one of the things that causes that charge to go from a negative charge, right down here, it's very negative, to a positive charge very rapidly, right? All those sodium ions. The next thing that happens is after we've fully opened up and filled the cell with as much, or at least as much sodium as it takes to get to about 30 to 35 millivolts, we kind of start shutting it down. And so these gates right here, these sodium channels are closed, right? Closed. But what opens up instead are these potassium channels, right? And this allows potassium to flow out because you know what? Positive ions don't want to be next to positive ions. So we're going to push them down and move them along the concentration gradient to where there's a lower concentration of positively charged ions, right? So that would be on the outside of the cell. As we're actually succeeding in that process and everything's moving through, we reach like equilibrium. But one thing I want to bring about is that sodium channel stays open. Okay, it's kind of like a cat door. So little rogue sodiums can go in and can go out. It's called a leaky. Oh, how funny. Sorry. I don't have a degree in spelling, you guys. Oh, or handwriting apparently. Leaky. There it is. Channel. Okay. So the concentrations of sodium and potassium on either side of the membrane, they aren't going to change a whole lot, but they do change enough, right? It's a measurable amount. And that causes that depolarization. So if we just move a few ions, we can actually have a huge effect on the membrane potential because axons are tiny and ions are tiny too, but they're pretty large inside of an axon. So just, for scale, only about 1 in a million of these ions are actually going to cross the membrane during an action potential. And the thin layer of ions closest to the membrane, those are the ones that are going to be affected first because they're right there. So of course they're going in right away. So even after a ton of action potentials, the cytosol still has a higher concentration of potassium. They're tiny, they're everywhere, and a lower concentration of these much larger sodiums than the extracellular fluid. Okay, so here's that action potential again, right? So here's resting membrane potential. We achieve positivity up to at least a threshold of negative 55 millivolts. Those channels open wide, depolarization causes a spike. The sodium channels close and allow for the rebalancing of the potassium channels, actually giving us a little bit of a hyperpolarization event before we restabilize, ready to fire again, back at negative 70 millivolts. Okay. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any other questions, feel free to come by my office hours, and I hope you have a lovely day.